theater here at Chapman and the director of the current production of Macbeth that we're going to talk to you about. I'll introduce everybody that will be involved as we get rolling, but I'd like to start off talking about the play first, and I'll let Dr. Kent Lehnhof discuss his own resume and talk to you a little bit about himself, and I'll do so about myself, and I'll let Don talk about himself a little bit too. This is my 21st year at Chapman. I have been directing Shakespeare for 32 years. And had been in the theater for 41. So I speak to you with some experience about this, and this is the 7th production of Macbeth that I've done, or been involved in from the time I was a 16-year-old high school student until now. So that's a little bit about me. I'd like to introduce Dr. Kent Lehnhof from the English department.
So thank you. So I'm Kent Lehnhof. I'm an associate professor of English, and I specialize in Shakespeare and early modern culture. And I do not have the experience of Professor Bradac, but I hope to make up for it in enthusiasm. So I'm gonna spend about 10 or 15 minutes just talking in general about the historical and thematic elements of the play, and then we'll give way to a more specific discussion about this production. So in 1603, Queen Elizabeth I fell sick and died, ending the 45-year reign of England's Virgin Queen. And as you might expect of a Virgin Queen, she did not leave any children to take up the throne when she died, and so England was forced to import, if you will, a king from Scotland. So they bring down King James VI of Scotland, and he becomes King James I of England. And about 3 or 4 years later, Shakespeare's acting company first presents Macbeth, which means that the tragedy that's commonly known as the Scottish play is written for a Scottish king, a man who spoke with a very thick Scottish accent and was very much seen as an outsider by the English commoners. This Scottish king, moreover, had just asserted his authority over Shakespeare's acting company. Prior to 1603, Shakespeare's company had been patronized by the Lord Chamberlain. They were known as the Lord Chamberlain's men. But within a few months of acceding to the throne, King James had sort of taken and laid claim on them and rechristened them the King's Men. And in some ways, Macbeth seems like just the kind of play a bunch of King's Men would want to perform for their new royal patron. For one, the play includes a Scottish thane named Banquo, who just happens to be one of James's direct ancestors. The historical records that Shakespeare had available to him indicate that Banquo conspired with Macbeth to kill King Duncan. Of course, Shakespeare sort of ignores that fact in his staging and distances Banquo from the regicide. So in Shakespeare's play, Banquo is merely a good man who falls prey to Macbeth's murderous suspicions. So Macbeth gives us a cleaned-up version of King James's ancestry. It also presents a rather flattering image of King James's rule. There's one point in the play when 3 prophetic speakers point to a long line of august kings that conveniently culminates in the reign of King James I. And what king wouldn't want to see himself as the fulfillment of a centuries-old prophecy? So we clean up the family tree, and we offer up King James as the best fruit of that family tree. And then there's the bit about witchcraft. Shakespeare's play famously begins with 3 weird sisters who cast spells, commit mischief, and utter dire prophecies. King James, of course, was a self-proclaimed witch hunter. Not only was he convinced that witches were real, but he was also convinced that they were trying to kill him personally. As King of Scotland, he actively participated in witchcraft trials, often examining the accused and drawing conclusions as an expert witness. And in 1597, he publishes a large and learned treatise called Demonology that details all of the sort of ins and outs of witches. And in 1604, soon after he accedes to the English throne, he strengthens the English laws against witchcraft and sorcery. But if the weird sisters of Macbeth play into James's interest or dread of witchcraft, they do so only obliquely, because the word witch isn't used in reference to them. The sisters in Shakespeare's text are termed wayard or wayward, which in early modern English can convey a wide range of meanings. It might mean the power to control the fate or destiny of human beings, but it might also mean nothing more than odd or strange looking. So there's a bunch of wiggle room there. And a lot depends on the performance. So as you watch the staging of the weird sisters in this production, one thing you'll want to ask yourself is, what kind of weird are they? Are they supernatural agents who determine the course of the events in the manner of Greek fates? Or are they just strange-looking women whose riddling words are all the excuse Macbeth needs to start carving up sleeping kings, to say nothing of women and children? One thing's for sure, it doesn't take much to turn Macbeth to evil. Macbeth has no sooner arrived on stage than he's plotting unthinkable deeds. And he'll tap the brakes a couple of times, but the overwhelming course of this play is Macbeth careening downhill into hell. For 4 full acts, our tragic protagonist is a butcher, pure and simple, wading in blood up to his knees and resolved to continue slogging through, regardless of the outcome. And this really sets Macbeth apart from the great tragedies that immediately precede it. Unlike Hamlet, Othello, and Lear, Macbeth does not tell the story of a man who is slowly and gradually undone. Macbeth doesn't have the sensitivity of a Hamlet, or the nobility of an Othello, or the majesty of a Lear. He's savage from the start. The first time we hear tell of Macbeth, he's cleaving MacDonald from the nave to the chops, and then fixing his decapitated head upon the battlements for all to see. Nor is Macbeth's descent into evil gradual or slow. He's plunging his dagger into the anointed king at the end of Act 1. It therefore can come as no surprise that Macbeth is a very dark play. Most of the action takes place at night, and even daytime doesn't fully mitigate the darkness. After the murder of King Duncan, the sun refuses to shine, and the Scots stumble around in a day without light. Yet, even in the midst of all this darkness, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth call for even more darkness. Here's Macbeth. Stars, hide your fires. Let not light see my black and deep desires. The eye, wink at the hand. And Lady Macbeth says, come, thick night, and pall thee in the dunnest smoke of hell, that my keen knife sees not the wound that it makes. But besides the darkness of night, which sort of pervades this play, there's one other color on stage, the redness of blood. Lady Macbeth is amazed at the amount of blood that pours from King Duncan's wounds. Who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him, she marvels. And once Duncan's blood is shed, there's a veritable flood. In Act 3, Macbeth says, I am in blood stepped so far that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as going o'er. At another point, he contemplates his stained hands and says, will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? No. This my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red. For many, Macbeth sums up the meaning of the play when he dully remarks, it will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood. So in this play, Shakespeare chooses to paint with only 2 colors, blood red and night black. Yet the picture he creates is hauntingly beautiful. From a poetic point of view, this play is gorgeous. Think of that line when Macbeth laments that his bloody hand will the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red. Could there be a more perfect bit of poetry? But could there be a more appalling content? And for me, this is the endless fascination of this play. In Macbeth, Shakespeare uses his considerable genius to express the abhorrent beauty of absolute evil. But the play doesn't stop here. If it did, it would perhaps be sort of morally monstrous. It's true that Lady Macbeth and Macbeth are never more alive than when they contemplate killing the king. They thrill with vitality and excitement. But as soon as they commit the act, they're oppressed with the banality of evil. And I'm not just talking about guilt. To be sure, they are both tormented by guilt, but even more afflicting than Macbeth's guilt is his ennui. His awesome will to power, magnificently manifested in Duncan's murder, gives way to an all-consuming listlessness. He'll murder many more times, but each time it becomes more mechanical, more tiresome, more wearisome. What really wears on Macbeth is the tedium of evil. In his wickedness, he cannot find contentment or joy or even desire. There's nothing but this, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, creeping at its petty pace to the last syllable of recorded time. And perhaps this is the ultimate truth of the tragedy. When decency and goodwill give way to wickedness and evil, life loses its meaning. It can be no more than a tiresome monotony, a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Thanks.
So with all that happiness, why present it and why do it here? Or why present the play at all? Well, obviously, in doing Shakespeare, the impulse is that it says something about our own, the times we live in. I have a couple of quotes I'm going to start off with and talk briefly about the way that we approach this. And then I'm going to introduce Professor Guy, who will talk about the visuals that we came up with. I've got a couple of quotes here. This is from Martin Esslin, who was a Shakespeare theorist and writer in the middle part of the 20th century, and he wrote an introduction into a Polish writer's book about Shakespeare called Shakespeare, Our Contemporary, that had a profound effect on the theater and on producing Shakespeare about 50 years ago. And the book was called Shakespeare, Our Contemporary. Esslin writes in the introduction to the book, he says, "In the English-speaking world, where familiarity has blunted the impact of shock in the presence of genius, where great thoughts have become eroded into cliches and the commonplaces of the school essay, until the monumental outlines of the whole disappear in the myopic gaze of the examiners of microscopic detail." Basically what he's saying, especially in the second part, is you can't see the forest for the trees. In other words, we analyze the play so much that you lose the profundity and power that the play presents. And he goes on to say, "So where in the world shall we seek the vantage point from which Shakespeare can be seen and interpreted with the highest degree of relevance, of fresh, revitalized significance from our own age?" And that's kind of the starting point of where we came from with this production, which was, what does it say to us now? Why do the play? And how does it reflect upon our lives? Because after all, if theater isn't vital and compelling, if it doesn't say something about the world we live in, or as Hamlet says, hold the mirror up to nature, then what's its purpose? Why do it? And so that's the impulse that began our production. And so with that, let me just give you a couple of, over the years, conclusions that I've come up with in producing Shakespeare. One of them is, first, there's no fixed reality, which means that you can't come to Shakespeare thinking that it's going to be a film, a television show, or any kind of representation of reality. Shakespeare didn't understand realism as we do, nor was it his intent to create a realistic staging of these characters, of these plays, but in his own fashion to tell a very unique story that would entertain his audience. So there's no realism as we know it. So you can't take Shakespeare on 21st century values. You've kind of got to go to him and say, how did he tell the story? Well, one of the ways he told the story is that he talked directly to the audience. And my actors and I, we have discussed the fact that a lot of the audience don't like it when you talk to them. And the reason they don't like it is because they're used to looking at screens, computer screens, television screens, movie screens, where theater is very interactive. It's very much a communion between the audience and the actor. The actors are live. It's like going to church, and the preacher looks out and talks to you. Well, it's the same thing here, and only it's secular in its nature. And so the actors are speaking their truth to you, telling Shakespeare's story to you in their own unique way. Because as I've told them consistently, if we change a member of the company, or if we change several actors in the play, the whole play changes. The chemistry of it changes. Just like it changes night to night depending on the audience that's there. The audience changes every night. So every night's a fresh experience, and every night's a new performance, which is the wonder of theater, and it's the only thing, really, that I think that theater has over film, television, and the visual arts. So those are two things that we come to it with. We come to it with this idea of talking directly to the audience, of speaking it so that it's clear, and it's set in a rhetorical fashion as opposed to grammar. Grammar, as we know it, was not put down on paper. There was no consistent spellings yet in English, in the English language. The grammar doesn't happen until almost 100 years later, and even though spelling started right after Shakespeare's death, I think the first book was actually burned up in the London fire. Do you know anything about that?
I don't.
Okay, well anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. So that there was no spelling. So we've gone back, and I tend to teach from Shakespeare's first folio, which was the first book that was written down in an anthology of the plays, and it was set down by actors who possessed what probably copies of the Fair and Foul Papers, although we don't know that for sure, and their memories. And what most texts, in fact all texts, contemporary texts that have been edited, they edit out a lot of the capitalizations, elongated spellings, and punctuation as it existed in Shakespeare's time. And I don't want to lecture on this, but basically it's a guidepost for actors to get closer to what Shakespeare actually wrote. And let me just give you a quick example. In Hamlet, for example, there's basically 4 versions of Hamlet that we have from the 17th century. We have the first and second folio, and we have the first and second quarto. All of those are different. One of them doesn't have to be or not to be in it. One of them is in a different place, and one of them is only an hour and a half long. So we go to the folio as being the closest thing to what we have of what Shakespeare wrote. And so this production is based on the first folio of 1623. So if you get a program, how many of you have seen it? A few of you. Okay, in the program it will say the tragedy of Macbeth, as opposed to, we call it Macbeth now, but the folio says the tragedy, and it's spelled with an IE at the end, of Macbeth. And that's why we do it. So that's a little bit about the impulse of our production, and I want to turn it over to Don Guy, who is our designer, and have him talk a little bit about the visual elements of the show and how it kind of fits into some of the issues that we've already talked about. Don?
Great, thanks.
For this particular production, I'm the set designer and the lighting designer. So my job, what I'm charged with, is creating the environment for the play to come to life. And to tell you a little bit how designs formulate in the theater, it's a very collaborative process. I meet with the director and we talk, and we may just talk in metaphor. We may throw out, the play, I want it to feel prison-like, or whatever. We just talk in these words so it starts sparking the imagination. So I have some place to go. So we did that quite a bit, and obviously I've read the play many, many times. I've designed it before several times, so I had a familiarity with the play, so I felt good about that. When we started talking about where we want the play set, we have to start figuring out how we can place it in some geographical location, or how we can place it in a time and place. So we came up with the idea, we don't want to think about it like that. Let's just place it in the future. So we kept thinking about, how can we place it in the future? Let's think about something maybe post-apocalyptic. So I started drawing on ideas from movies. I do that quite often. I started thinking about movies like Blade Runner and Waterworld and things like that. What would happen if we fell into chaos? You know, and so I came up with the idea with the set you have here, based on director's needs too, multiple levels. We talked about having an enter above. And I started looking at things and how the play spoke to me. The play is very, let's say, it's a difficult play. So I wanted to create an environment almost prison-like, as you can see. I wanted to find some way that we could show the worst side of humanity, things that, to me, speak horror, hell on earth, prison-like, things of that nature. So that's kind of where I moved with it. And then through discussions I had with Professor Bradac, we liked the idea, and we moved forward, and we started developing color schemes and things of that nature. So we came up with what you see here. Now, the play, or the set, is very metallic, dark, gray, things like that, because we knew through the lighting, I wanted to use lighting as a metaphor, so I could bathe the stage in red. And because the set is the color it is, it takes the color that you're placing upon it. So the stage turns completely red. Things like that, because the stage is gray, and gray is a neutral color, and it actually becomes a chameleon, so it becomes whatever color you place upon it. So things like that started to transpire. We also talked about making the play very light and dark. So we use a lot of shadow in addition to light, because through that we can start showing the good and bad in mankind, and can get very deep and philosophical with it. But I think when you see the play, there are moments when it becomes very dark, when murder's taking place, and that is the time in which I make the play very dark. I start using lots of silhouettes, and we use lots of textures, so as a character moves through the space, they move through light and shadow, which I think, to me, it speaks to me about that good and evil in mankind. So I think we did a really good job of capturing, I hope, what Shakespeare intended the audience to see. And the beauty, I think, of what happens on stage and the way that we've lit it and the environment that we've created as a team is that wherever you sit in the audience, you may see a different show that night, because we may have shadows from stage right and pushing something from stage left, and we have unnatural positions. We have characters entering, like the witches, so to speak, entering from the earth with red light shooting out and fog and smoke. And we created an environment for what Professor Bradac and I were talking about, something that's more rock and roll-y as well. It's a very cutting edge, very industrial, very futuristic. We took a look at lighting from different concerts. We looked at bands like Kiss and things like this to draw our inspiration, because we have to be inspired and excited as artists as well, so the story will be spoken to you. And I think with everything that we've put together, we have brought Shakespeare's words to life, which I think is very, very exciting. We used a neutral palette set, and the actors and the words introduced the color, if that makes sense. And yeah, I'm very proud of what we did. Also, what I want to talk about is how we utilize our students here at Chapman. I think that's important. Typically in our productions, we'll have several students who are designers as well. On this particular production, we had a student who was a sound designer. We had a student who was the makeup designer. We had students working on hair, all sorts of areas of the design process. Also, myself being lighting and set, and we had an adjunct faculty member, Katie Wilson, who was the costume designer. We use students to assist us. So we're professors here, of course, but we're also professionals in the industry. So we bring our world experience here, and students work with us so they themselves can see how professionals work, how professionals develop ideas, how professionals communicate with another professional. So they're gaining sort of real-world experience or on-the-job training. And that's one thing that we really promote here, so students can see how you get from point A to point B, because we stress process over product. Because if the process is fantastic, well, the product's going to be fantastic. And theater being a collaborative art form, we talk incessantly, we communicate all the time, we draw ideas, and then we end up putting something on stage that hopefully will touch an audience, will make you want to come back to the theater, will leave you asking questions to yourself. Hopefully they'll answer some questions you might have had about your own personal life or whatever, because theater is very, very interactive between the stage and the audience. Great, thank you.
So now I wanted to talk a little bit about the violence in the show. Dr. Lehnhof alluded to the fact that it's a bloody play. There's a great deal of bloody imagery. Blood is in the play, blood must be shed. And while we were rehearsing in January, there was civil unrest, and things started happening in Egypt and in the Middle East, and now in Tunisia and Libya and Qatar. And all of those have echoes in this play. So getting back to my original point about Shakespeare being our contemporary, what's going on is reflected in this play. The violence. The interesting thing was one of the news reports that came out initially were that people were in the streets with machetes. And we happened to have machetes in the production. So it was something that just resonated with me, and again, it was something that reflected the world. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to have the cast introduce themselves, and then as they introduce themselves, we're going to get up and we're going to show a little bit of the violence, and then I'm going to show you some of the techniques that we use in the production to heighten certain aspects of it. So Kevin, you want to start? Introduce your name and what role you play, and go to it.
Hi, I am Kevin Swanstrom, and I play the role of Leonce, slash the general, and I'm a sophomore.
Hold your applause. We're going to go through a lot of them.
Hey everybody, I'm Harrison. I play Satan, and I'm a sophomore as well.
I'm Chris. I play Macbeth. I'm a junior.
I'm Roscoe, and I'm a junior, and I play Macduff.
I'm Kelly. I'm playing Lady Macbeth, and I'm a senior. Hey, what's up? I'm Katie Gunderson, and I am a witch and a murderer.
Hi, my name is Amir Walaklu. I'm a junior and I'm playing Bacon.
Hi, I'm Malia Wright. I'm junior and I am playing a witch and a murderer.
Hi, I'm Maddie Johnson. I'm a junior and I play Lady Macduff.
I'm Martha Magruder. I am a junior as well, and I play Ross.
I'm Jenny Ludwig. I am the stage manager and I am a senior.
I'm Sarah Myers. I'm the sound designer for this production, and I'm a junior.
I'm Colin Sprague. I play Bloody Captain and Young Steward, and I'm a junior.
I'm Paige Fodor, and I play Duncan and the Porter, and I'm also a junior.
I'm Jenna Selby. I'm a sophomore, and I play the gentlewoman and a Kuroku.
Hi, my name is Nicole Javier. I am a senior, and I play one of the witches and one of the murderers.
Hi, I'm Sarah Eisenberg. I play the boy and Kuroku, and I'm a junior.
Hi, I'm Katrina Klein. I'm a junior, and I'm the servant.
Hi, I'm Chelsea here. And I play Lennox, and I came in late.
So they said Kuroku, which is actually, we use a device from the Japanese theater, from the kabuki. We use black-clad stagehands, and the word in Japanese for black is Kuroku. So that's a device that Shakespeare didn't know anything about, but if he was around, he would use it to tell the story. He would use anything that was available to him to more completely tell the story. So that's my license and my freedom to be able to utilize contemporary techniques to heighten the story and make it more available to the audience. So we're going to do the scene where Banquo's death. You guys want to come out? Do you have your weapons? Yeah, the beginning of the scene. Let me use your knife for a second. Yeah, sure. Sure. So we'll demonstrate the Kuroku, although they're not in costume. You won't see that. These are, as you can see, these are real knives that have been blunted. They're very much like a marine K-bar that's being used currently. They are real knives that have been blunted down. They could cause harm. We hired a professional fight choreographer to come in to choreograph the fights for the stage so that no one would get hurt. But the impending possibility of harm is ever present with us, and we rehearse these fights nightly to make sure that we do not harm anyone. So no one was harmed in the staging of this production. So this is the death of Banquo.
But who did bid thee join with us?
Macbeth.
He needs not our mistrust since he delivers our offices in what we have to do to the direction just.
Then stand with us.
The west yet glimmers with some streaks of day. Now spurs the later traveler apace to gain the timely end. And near approaches the subject of our watch. Hark! I hear horses.
Give us light there! Ho! And 'tis he. The rest that are within the note of expectation already are at the court.
His horses go about.
Almost a mile.
He does usually, so all men do from hence top palace gate. Make it their walk. A light! A light! Stand to it!
It will be rain tonight.
Let it come down!
Oh, Spectre! There's a one down, the sun is fled.
We have lost best half of our affair.
Well, let's await and see how much is done.
These are our Kuroku, and they raise the spirit, and then he comes right back in as Banquo's ghost. So the problem that was solved from a staging aspect was, how do you get the body off the stage? And the way to do it was to bring in this convention from the Japanese theater, and then make him come alive. And the audience's imagination participates with that, and they see the spirit rise, or the bodily the embodiment of the spirit, and then he comes right back in again as Banquo's ghost, which is in the next scene, I believe, or very close to the next scene. And you also heard a little bit, even though I think we were a little off, of this kind of underscoring of the human voice, and I want to just talk about that for a second. In a theater or in a live performance or in a live space where there is no amplification, I am touching you by speaking and using my vocal cords to vibrate so that they move molecules that become sound waves that touch your tympanic ear. And so, not in abstraction, but in reality, I'm actually touching you by speaking to you. So there is a real interaction between us. And that interaction is something that you really don't get when the sound is amplified. Yes, but it's remixed, digitized, it comes out, and it's a bit artificial. But right now, person to person, we're in that kind of relationship. So very much, it's about the actors' voices coming to life and speaking this ancient text. And we use a filmic technique, which is an underscore to create tension. So we're going to do the scene, Kelly and Chris, you remember it? I mean, it's been 5 days. Where we do, well, we'll show you. You guys want to get in the position for the, you know what scene I'm talking about? The same thing we did on Friday. Yeah, right. So do you want to talk a little bit about the scene, the two of you? Or just want to do it? Just do it, right? All right. So what you'll hear is, you'll hear the chorus, and you see how we're using Professor Guy's set. The one thing we don't have here is the lighting, and they're not in costume, they don't have the makeup. But it creates, you've got multi-level effect, and well, we'll talk about it after they do it.
I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, only vaulting ambition which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other.
She's almost stopped right in the chamber.
Hath she asked for me?
No, you not, she has.
We will proceed no further in this business. She hath honored me of late, and I've got golden opinions from all sorts of people, which would now be worn in their news of loss, not cast aside so soon.
Was the hope drunk wherein you dressed yourself? Hath it slept since, and wakes it now to look so green and pale what it did so freely? From this time such I account thy love. Art thou afeard to be the same man on act and valor as thou art in desire? Wouldst thou have that which thou esteemest the ornament of life, and live a coward in thine own esteem? Letting I dare not wait upon I would, like the poor cat in the attic.
Prithee, peace! I dare do all that may become a man. Who dares do more is none.
What beast was it then that made you break this enterprise to me? When you durst do it then, you were a man. And to be more than what you were, you would be so much more the man. Nor time nor place is then adhere, and yet you would make both. They have made themselves, and that their fitness now does unmake you. suck, and know how tender 'tis to love the babe that milks me. I would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from its boneless gums and dashed the brains out, and I so sworn as you have done to this.
If we should fail.
We fail? But screw your courage to the sticking place and will not fail. When Duncan is asleep, whereto the rather shall her day's hard journey soundly invite her. Her two chamberlains will I with wine and wassail so convince that memory, the warder of the brain, shall be a fume, and the receipt of reason a limbic only, when in swinish sleep their drenched natures lies as in a death. What cannot you and I perform upon the unguarded Duncan? What not put upon her spongy officers who shall bear the guilt of our great quell?
Bring forth men children only, for thy undaunted metal should compose nothing but males. Will it not be received when we have marked with blood those sleepy two of her own chamber, and used their very daggers that they have done?
Who dares receive it other, as we shall make our griefs and clamor roar upon her death?
I am settled, and bend up each corporal agent to this terrible feat. Away, and mock the time with fairest show. False face must hide what the false heart doth know.
See. I walk down there. Can you do the portrait? Can I do the portrait? Okay. So we're going to do the porter scene. You guys who were on stage for that? Porter? One of the problems that you face when doing Shakespeare is that he wrote every play, every tragedy had comedy in it. Every comedy had tragedy. So in Macbeth, there's very little comedy, but there is one sequence, which is the porter. And the porter comes out and talks a great deal about the topical references to what was going on during Shakespeare's lifetime, that unless you've read the history and understand what he's speaking about, don't make much sense to you. Every time that I've seen the production, the play has been done with a very dark, kind of sinister, unseemly type of fellow who would come out and, well, it frankly wasn't very funny. So there was comic relief. So one of the techniques that we used was to, how would we do that today? Well, this person might be a stand-up comedian or clown. And so we combined those two things. And I also combined Duncan with the porter. Now in Shakespeare's day, we know that a lot of the actors doubled, tripled, and quadrupled roles because they didn't have large companies. They couldn't afford them, as we can't. So we tend to go back and we have people playing multiple parts. And sometimes the duplication of roles echo, and we make an echo into the scene. In fact, why don't we go into the scene with you guys coming into it, and then what you have to envision here is Duncan, who's just been murdered, coming back on as a clown with a mask and a full clown outfit. And we are also having it played by a woman. And there are, as you probably saw as we went through it, many of the women are playing what are traditionally male roles. And as you know, in Shakespeare's day, all of the roles were played by men. So gender in Shakespeare is a very interesting and intriguing aspect of how you put the play together. And I think it informs us now today. We don't have those same gender issues. They're different gender issues, but we've made a decision to cross-gender cast the play, which means that I have women in many of the men's parts and would have had men playing some of the witch roles. But in this particular production, we didn't do that. So I want to show you the porter scene, and then we can start a discussion and go into a Q&A. The porter. You guys are applauding, right? Yes.
Beelzebub. Here's a farmer that hanged himself on the expectation of plenty. Come in time, have napkins enough about you. Here, you'll sweat for it. Knock, knock, who's there in the other devil's name? Faith is an equivocator who could swear in both scales against either scale, who committed treason enough for God's sake, yet could not equivocate to heaven. Oh, come in, equivocator. Knock, 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 who's there? Faith, here's an English tailor, come hither for stealing out of a French horse. Come in, tailor, here you may roast your goose. Knock, knock, never at quiet. What are you? But this place is too cold for help. I'll devil porter it no further. I had thought to have let in some of all professions that go the primrose way to the everlasting bonfire. Anon, anon, I pray you! Remember the porter.
Was it so late, friend, ere you went to bed that you do lie so late?
Faith, sir, we were carousing till the second cock. And drink, sir, is the great provoker of three things.
And what three things does drink especially provoke?
Marry, sir, nose painting, sleep, and urine. Lechery, sir, it provokes and unprovokes. It provokes the desire, but takes away the performance. Therefore, much drink may be said to be an equivocator with lechery. It makes him, and it mars him, it sets him on, it takes him off, makes him stand to, and not stand to. In conclusion, equivocates him in a sleep, and giving him the lie, leaves him.
I believe drink gave thee the lie last night.
That it did, sir, I the very throat of me.
Is thy master stirring? Ah, our knocking has awakened him. Here he comes.
Good morrow, noble sir.
Good morrow, both.
Okay, and that's that scene. Why don't you guys stay up here and we can answer questions and Q&A. And that's kind of our formal presentation, and now we wanted to open it up for questions. If you had any questions of the cast, of Professor Guy, myself, or Dr. Lehnhof about the play, or particular areas that you might be interested in. And Mildred. She asked how my perspective has changed over time. Well, I played Macbeth when I was 16 years old in a small version. Then I played it again when I was in college and I didn't know what I was doing. I produced it in the 80s, professional production of it, and that one actually introduced the Japanese element into it. So that was one element that's still in. In the 90s, I produced another professional production of it here on this stage. And then I've done 2 subsequent student productions. Each one is different, and I think each one of them depends on who the cast is. And so we really bring the production out of the students or the actors who we're working with. I don't know, I think that when I do it, it seems like it's time to do it, time to investigate the play from a theatrical perspective. So I don't know how it's changed, but it's as I've grown older and hopefully a little wiser, my understanding of the play is a little deeper, I think. But I don't know if the perspective has changed, yes?
Was it your goal from the outset to try to reflect the violence in today's world, or was that sort of just a...
Well, I think that goes without saying. I think we live in a violent society. This is a violent country. We live in a violent world. And it's very, very similar to, I think, Shakespeare's own day. I don't think we're that much different. And he talks of human nature. We're certainly a lot more technologically advanced, but we're still killing each other. Murder hasn't gone out of style or vogue or fashion. And depending on your point of view politically, it's there all the time. So I think it was one of the reasons why I decided to do the play a year ago. And I think the world events just reflect what's going on in society. So, yes?
I have a question for Lady Mac. How do you approach a character that's essentially purely evil and really has very few redeeming qualities to her?
Well, I disagree with that because I don't view her as evil. And if you're playing a character and you try to play them as evil, if she's played as purely evil, I believe it takes away depth with her. And I do feel that she has a redeeming moment because she does go insane, essentially from guilt. So for me to play her, I can't go at her like she's evil. I have to go at her like she's completely human and has all the same qualities as you or I. Just maybe she'll take them to further extremes than hopefully most people will.
Yes?
Why did you choose to do the play
What I did, as I said before, Shakespeare doesn't have a reality. So we impose the reality. And so whatever reality we establish, whether we tend to look at, and I mean our culture, tends to look at Shakespeare's plays through a 19th century prism. So our vision of what the plays were is very much through what they did in the 19th century. From the research that I've been able to look at over the years, how the plays were presented in Shakespeare's day was very different than the ways that we are used to seeing them presented. So I wanted to find a place that encompassed areas of the past and areas of the present. And so by going into a future post-apocalyptic, we'd go back to a society that maybe is tribal in nature. And this is very much, I think, what Shakespeare's talking about. So you've got thanes instead of earls. You have people who are massing together to create, hopefully, hope in the end, which is what does happen. But that's why. So we're not in a real place. We're in an impression of a place. Just like the globe wasn't a real place. So it's kind of like upon this stage, let your imagination work. From Henry V.
Just to kind of follow up on what Tom's talking about, there are contemporary drawings from visitors from the continent that came to watch performances in Shakespeare's theater. And so we have these sort of drawings of what the performance looks like. And you'll see that up on the stage there will be characters dressed in Roman togas, there will be characters dressed in Roman armor, but there will also be characters dressed in Elizabethan doublets and hose. So there isn't, when Tom says there's no reality, what he kind of means is there's no sort of historical fixity, that there's really no such thing as anachronism on Shakespeare's stage because sort of all times are sort of co-present. And it's curious that at the time that Shakespeare's contemporaries were setting a lot of plays in London, and dropping names and talking about this tavern or that street or this district, Shakespeare doesn't set plays in London. In fact, he doesn't set plays in places that he's even familiar with. So, he sets plays in Denmark. He'd never been to Denmark. He set plays in Venice. He'd never been to Venice. And so the idea that sort of post-apocalyptic setting is fitting is because it's kind of amorphous and non-specific, although it has a certain sort of feel to it. And I think that when Shakespeare turns to Scotland, or when he turns to Rome, or when he turns to Venice, he's sort of gravitating towards a certain ambiance without any sort of specificity.
Thanks. Yes. Mildred. Talking to the actors here.
Well, I think my opinion is that in Shakespeare, the biggest element of style is the language. And it's how we're taught to approach it here at Chapman, is that the language is the most important thing. It's what makes Shakespeare I mean, obviously there's other differences between Shakespeare and Ibsen or Shakespeare and Eugene O'Neill, but the biggest thing is the words that Shakespeare uses, and we're constantly being told, use the word. And the idea is that if you believe in the text and what you're saying, and you know what it is that you're saying, then everything else sort of falls into place. Your own connections to the words are what will make you connect to the play and to the audience.
I'll touch on that a little bit too. When you say it's cabaret-esque, that might, what triggers in me is there's a lot of sexuality represented in this show, and it's something we worked with a lot throughout the rehearsal process, and that's, a lot of what Shakespeare challenges you to do as an actor is to reach inside of yourself and find those sides of yourself. If you're exploring that and then you're up there backlit in behind fencing, then it's going to look cabaret, but these are all aspects of ourselves as actors which we're representing. Whichever character we move into throughout the show comes because it comes from ourselves. I don't think we really look at it as a style which we're going into. It's just a facet of our being which we open up at a certain time on stage.
To piggyback off of that, I know the witches and we would have numerous conversations. One moment we're a witch, and then the next moment we're a murderer, and then in the next scene we're part of the dinner scene, as just passerbyers, and it was a challenge as an actor to go shift to shift to shift in all these different gears at all these different times. But Tom constantly, Professor Bradac, excuse me, constantly reminded us that these are ourselves. Like when I talk to my mom, I'm a completely different person than when I'm talking to my roommate or when I'm talking to my boyfriend. So it was interesting and really almost freeing to have that analogy put on it. It's like, I'm just playing a different part in a different situation. And we use this term a lot in this department. It is an abstract of yourself. I mean, there's no such thing as character in this production. It's what we bring to this situation. So I think that, I hope that kind of touched on what you're asking.
That was a lot.
Anything else? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Professor Guy, question for your concept of creating a hell-like prison fascinates me. And it's interesting that the prison itself seems to be on the upper tier. The stairs are ascending into the prison, where it seems almost like a conflicting pattern of motion. We're used to descending into some kind of prison, descending into hell. My question to you is, do you find at different parts of the play that you're using stages, almost as stages of hell or stages of, to mirror the stages of the scene and to mirror the stages of the evil that's presented?
Yes, I think there are many times. There are lots of times where, if you see the play, you'll see where Professor Bradac is having a scene here. But what I think is happening on the upper levels, there's always something going on. It's rarely a bare stage. What there might be is, you might interpret it as some type of purgatory or something, where there's these creatures that are creating these harmonics and things. And it's all meant to be visually interesting, but it's also meant to be, I think more than anything, it does sort of beckon that hell. And I know it's sort of this ascension, but also you have to take in consideration too, you have evil people in the play. The way that I kind of approached it, you have evil people in the play that don't realize they're evil, or maybe they're battling good from evil, and it made sense to me. And visually, when we approach design too, sometimes we design things because aesthetically it looks pleasing. Because I knew when we wanted people to be behind the action that was taking place, it may be a little bit more of an upstaging if I have a lead here and somebody right behind them making moves. So by creating this sort of juxtaposition, they can work together in harmony, so one's not upstaging another. So it's kind of a designerly approach to it. But when Tom mentioned to me, he said, hey, I want people to be moving at all times. I want the witches to be visible in silhouette. I want the murderers to be visible in silhouette. We then started developing the enter above, because we knew that they would be portrayed here in silhouette, where the performers, the main leads could be here, if that kind of makes sense to you. And then there were many, many times where we came up with ideas. I mean, even like the chain. The chain was a last-minute addition. And we do this sometimes when we're designing. I sit in the house and I look at it and I go, well, we got a black background, but that middle void is too black. It's killing me. There's too much of a juxtaposition. How can we touch the bottom level to the top level? So we created these vertical elements that really break the space up. It actually makes the top, when it's lit, not under house lights, but when we go into a theatrical setting, it makes the set look even taller. And I purposely have the chain link going forever, so when you're watching it, you don't see the top. It looks like the chain link just keeps on going. And I wanted to have that sort of omnipresent, wow, you know, we could actually have a little bit of evil in us. I wanted that sort of good and evil to really be played out. And I think it was quite successful. But it's having that up top that gives us our really interesting visuals and helps really carry the story forward. So hopefully that answers it. But I think the whole play is good and evil. Upstairs is good and evil. Downstairs is good and evil. And I think by playing both of those, there is no good and evil, so to speak. We always talk about what is good, what is evil. And I think Tom talks about that a lot. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, going off of that, it's a really interesting point. I personally think that this platform here is sort of the middle ground, honest part of the stage. My character personally has a lot of just honest news to deliver the audience, and it's all on this platform. And when I do descend down the stairs and I tell Macbeth that Macbeth has fled to England, personally it's the hardest line I have because it's delivering bad news, and it's down here on this platform. And so it's really interesting, and there's another part where we're having kind of a cauldron seance session, and we're all on the floor, and my line comes from this hole here. So it really is, there's different places for everywhere, but a lot of, I think, truth that was just realized was this platform is very this is where the honesty, I mean, it's all honest, but just here's what's happening line, maybe a neutral ground.
And this is a lot where the trials and the fear and the anxiety and the emotions and the passion happens here. And then when we're up there behind the fence, it's a lot of viewing, and it's present, that, I mean, if you look at it as a prison-like thing, we're there and we're viewing everything that's going on. Maybe they will get to hell, maybe they will go to heaven.
And then to touch on that, all the deaths happen down here. Everyone gets killed and murdered down here. Except for Macbeth.
I also never, I think I'm the only character who never actually does get to go up there. And Lady Macbeth, the only time she goes up there is during the sleepwalking scene. And I think that's kind of an interesting aspect too. I never get out. There's a part where the witches are up there and they disappear. I say, where are they? And for me, that's something that I played with, is wanting to be able to go up there where they were, but I can't get up there.
Anything else? Any other questions? Yes?
I have a question about music. I talked earlier about how you sort of want a rock and roll environment.
Well, yeah.
Well, sort of. Was there ever a time when you wanted to use, or you tried out more music, and it didn't work? I'm just curious about.
In the soundtrack is original guitar work from one of our students, Andre Stoika, and the kind of heavy metal spoke to me, and he gave me 7 CDs full of heavy metal to listen to, so I could kind of come up with it, and I got a headache. But I thought it spoke to the play, and so originally I asked him to score some of the witches' chants that I was thinking about having them sing, a la heavy metal. Because the double toil and trouble especially has that sense to it in my estimation. We get a sense of it, but we weren't able to coordinate it far enough in advance so that we actually had music to deal with so that they could actually sing it. But the impulse was there, and maybe when I do it an 8th time, we might try that. But that'll be a ways away. But yeah, that was an impulse. We tried it and we just couldn't get it together. Yes, sir.
I actually had a question for Macbeth. In the play, as I've read it and understood it, Macbeth knows, in a sense, what he's doing is wrong, though he tries to justify it with good intentions, and even he can't convince himself fully. Was that difficult for you to portray? Because it's one thing if you're just a dirtbag character, with bad intentions and you know it, or you're trying to go the good route. But to know what you're doing is wrong and try and justify it, was that hard to portray for you?
Yeah. But what I found that worked for me is this idea that Macbeth is afraid of living his life without having really affected anything. The personal fear that I have is living my life and having it be the same as it was when I came in as when I'm leaving. And I think that's where this dilemma of human ambition is. I think Macbeth is some of the greatest ambition, a person can have, and it's almost a superpower, but it's a curse too. I think he is not afraid of what of his ambition and what he can do. And it's not until the end, I think, until tomorrow, that he really realizes the full extent. And by then it's too late. But like Kelly said, yeah, everything that I do, I have to find justification in, because you can't just play a villain.
I think I told him at one point, if the Nazis had won, we'd all be speaking German. History is written by the victors. So in essence, there's a lot justified based on whether you win or you lose. And that goes for politics. That goes in corporate life. The losers are wrong and the winners tend to be right, unless they're so vile. But the actor has to be able to justify it and portray it without doing what I keep telling them: don't twist your mustache on this. Don't make it evil, because you can't relate to it, and it just becomes two-dimensional. So, any other questions? Anything else you guys would like to add?
Come see it.
Yeah.
Come see it.
It's gonna be good.
You'll enjoy it.
Don?
Something like $5 for students, I think. They say it's $15 on the posters, but it's
Not
like
more
$5
than
if you come half an hour beforehand.
Yeah.
We did sell out the first 3 shows, so you can come. We have tomorrow night, Friday night, Saturday night, and a Saturday matinee. That matinee is almost sold out. We want to thank you for coming tonight, and hope you get a chance to see the show. Thank you very much.